This is one of those things where the finishing is the thing you want to rush. You've finished all your knitting and you just want to wear the thing you're making or lay it out or whatever, but I personally never ever start finishing on the same night I start knitting, because if I do, I just rush and I make a mess, because you have to spend as long on the finishing as you do on the rest of it. Otherwise it's a waste of time spending all this time making a beautiful garment. So this is a very pretty, though I say so myself, little cardigan that I'm making, and I'm going to show you mattress stitch for joining it. Now, mattress stitch is really, really simple. All you start looking for is the little ladder up the side. Now this ladder here and here, and you'll find that all the way up both sides of your knitting, whatever stitches you've done. But here's, even with the lace stitch, you'll find your ladder. It's important to find that, because then that means you go up in the same point all the way along. So we'll start at the bottom, or the top if you wish, and do a figure of 8. Now I love this stitch because you can use any coloured yarn and it doesn't show at the end. And every time I do it, I just think that's magical. So I'm doing a figure of 8, and this is purely to hold it. Leave yourself a nice long, well, usually longer than that, so that you can sew in afterwards. So I've now done my figure of 8. Now I'm going to be looking for my ladder. Use a blunt-ended needle if you've got one, purely because you're not going to go into the yarn, you're just going to go into that ladder. And you're going to pick up 2 stitches. Okay. Leave it nice and loose to begin with so you can easily see what you're doing. I'm picking up 2 stitches there. Now when you go back into this side, go through the same hole as you left last time. So there, I found my ladder, the 2 stitches there. Then back in on this side. And you're going to do this all the way up. I'll do a little bit more because I love the magic of when you then pull it together. If you catch the actual garment rather than going through, then this bit isn't as easy to do at the end when you pull it. Okay, so that's where you've joined it. Now if you hold the bottom and the top and pull, it completely disappears, so you can't see your join at all. On the other side, you've got a lovely even little hem. And you can see that you've been through the same stitches all the way through. Now if you used a different colour, you wouldn't actually see the yarn through there. So that's a mattress stitch. Joyful. So now we're going to be grafting, or Kitchener stitch, which is very easy when you know how to do it, but you always need to have the directions right next to you, because otherwise you lose your rhythm and then you don't get the effect that you want to have. So you start off with a setup row stitch. So you go into, you've got your stitches here on the front and the back of your needles. Okay, so we're going to be working from front to back, front to back, front to back, and basically joining the 2 halves of the toe of the sock. So with the setup row stitch, I'm going to go purlwise into the front needle there, pull your thread through, leave the stitch on, and then knitwise into the back one. Okay, and that's your setup. And then you have to get yourself into a rhythm. So front needle, you're going to go knitwise and take the stitch off, and then purlwise into the second stitch. And then you move to your back needle, and you go purlwise into the first stitch and slip it off the needle. Make sure you only slip the one off at a time. And then knitwise into the other stitch. Then as I'm pulling this tighter, you'll see that you're going to end up with a seamless join. Go knitwise into this stitch, pull it off. And then purlwise, leave it on. Knitwise, leave it on. Sorry, purlwise. So purlwise, slip it off. Knitwise, keep it on. Knitwise, slip it off. So you can see how the finish is starting to happen now. Purlwise. The back stitch. So you're ending up, you can't actually see where the join is because it looks like the stitching has just continued over the edge. So you could use this for joining shoulder seams, joining any seams really, so you don't cast off. Just keep your stitches on a stitch holder, and then when you're ready, you can just do Kitchener stitch or grafting stitch to join it. Now you can make detachable collars, or you can join your collar and knit as you're going along. So just a few pointers really if you're joining and then knitting it up, which is the way I always do it. The first thing is your pattern's always going to tell you how many stitches you need across a certain amount of point, and you're usually going to be going around the edges like that. Sometimes you, what's that called? The thingy in the middle. Your button bands. Sometimes your bands are joined onto your collar, so it's done as all as one work. Sometimes they're done as separate. The most important thing you must do is follow how many stitches it says for the particular area. So it might say you need a certain number of stitches for right front, left front, the back, the bands here, or it might give you a total number for around here. Now what I always do is measure and place markers around, so that I can make sure I get an even number of stitches picked up. If you don't have them even, you'll end up with awful ruffling and you won't like it, you'll pull it out. Speaking to the person who's had to do that, learning by your mistakes is sometimes a good way. So I would measure this. If I knew it's, for example, had to take 20, pick up 20 stitches along here, I'd find my halfway point and my quarter-way points, and then I'd make sure that I picked up 5 stitches, 5 stitches, 5 stitches, all the way around, and then you end up with a really nice even collar, which is the most important thing for it to lay nicely. Okay. I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest form of pocket. So what I've done here, because I've started it off, is I've just done a garter stitch up until the point, stocking stitch, sorry, up until the point where I wanted my pocket to start. And then at the point where the pocket's going to start, here, I've then slipped my, sorry, I'm in a bit of a tangle there. I've then slipped my centre stitches onto a different needle, and I've done a few rows there in garter stitch, and that is going to form the pocket flap. Okay, so that is going to be the pocket flap up there. And then on a separate needle I've done the pocket, which is going to be the pocket that goes, the actual base, the actual, I don't know what you call that, the actual pocket cocket, the bit in the pocket that you use as the pocket. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to join the two together, and it's sort of one of those where everything will become clear as I'm doing it. So this is where my pocket is now. I'm going to join this on. It's going to look a bit funny to start off with. Now the number of stitches in my pocket flap at the back is the same number that I've continued knitting in up here. So you want to end up at the end of this process with the same number of stitches as you started before you even started your pocket. So I'm now going to join this onto here. This cable's a little bit long for this, it keeps popping me all around. Okay. I'll do another row and you'll see how it's starting to fit in. Now for me, this is my go-to pocket because I just like the finished look and the fact that you can give a very pretty little cuff to the pocket if you want to, or you can keep it plain, but you can make that a decorative feature very, very easily. So now your actual pocket is now joined on to your knitting, and you'd keep knitting this now as per the pattern. I'm going to show you the front and then the back, and you'll see how they join together very, very easily. Okay, pocket flap back, turn it around like that. So this is my front, that's going to be my cuff, and inside is my pocket. When I've finished, just sew those sides on, either side there, and then this is the back. And again, just sew the pocket around there, but it gives a very neat, tidy little finish. You can't see the actual pocket, there's no messy joins. I think it gives a lovely effect. Buttonholes. I'll show you two very just easy buttonholes, horizontal one and a vertical one. Both very straightforward. So your horizontal one, just go in a few stitches. Now the horizontal one, you're going to cast off stitches. How many you cast off depends on how big a button you want to be able to get into the hole. So you need to think about that before you actually do this, or choose your buttons after you've made your holes, otherwise you'll have buttons that don't fit. Personally, I never choose buttons till I've finished a project, because until I've seen the finished item I don't know what I want it to look like. So simply all you do is for this one I'm going to cast off 3. So just a very straightforward cast off. Okay, it's given me a loop there. Just have to get to the end of the loop back again. And then all you're going to do when you get back to where you've cast them off is you're going to cast on the same number of stitches. Across to So here I am at where I've cast off. So now, there's lots of different ways of casting on midway. Personally, I just do this. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's given me the 3 stitches that I've just cast off. And it's given me my pearl, so it looks like a pearl there. 1, 2. So we should now have the same number of stitches that we had before we did the buttonhole. So I'm now knitting into the stitches that I've just cast on. And then you can see there is your buttonhole. Okay, so now I'm going to do a vertical buttonhole. So for this, you're going to basically just stop knitting on one part of it and knit on another part of it. So I want my buttonhole to be here, so I'm going to turn. This is one of the joys of using circular needles for straight knitting. I can just leave those over there. If you haven't got a cable, then just pop those onto a stitch holder just whilst you're doing this. So you're then going to continue in the pattern for however many rows you want your buttonhole to be across. Again, that will depend on the size of your button. So that's one row. So you see, if I stop now, that would just leave a very, very small little button. So I'll do it for another couple of rows. So that's 3 rows I've done now. I'm going to get to the end of this row and then I'm going to break this yarn. So now what you need to do for however many rows you've just done on that side, you need to make sure you do the same on the other. So now I'm going to pop these through onto the cable. I'm going to pick up the other side. I'm picking up at this edge rather than the other, just purely because it'd be easier to lose my end at the hem edge rather than in the middle of the knitting, or right by my buttonhole. Don't want to add bulk into my buttonhole. So I need to do 3 rows again. Two. Two. So now I've done 3 rows in each. Pull this one through, and you can see then how your buttonhole's starting to form. There's your buttonhole. So now I'm just going to join it back together. Okay, and then you can see I've now got a vertical buttonhole there as opposed to a horizontal one there.